I never imagined that my commitment to work and my close relationship with my boss would lead me to a place as eerie and unsettling as the old abandoned factory. My name is Daniel, and I'm a man in my early 30s, dedicated to my job to the point that my boss often refers to me as his right-hand man. So, when he asked me to visit the factory that had been closed for the past 12 years, I didn't hesitate, even though the place was located far from the city and would take me 2 hours to reach. As the sun began to set, I parked my car in front of the factory's rusted gates. My boss had given me no specific reason for this visit, just a message to check things out. I couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding as I was going to light a cigarette and survey the structure before me. Something strange caught my eye that made me drop my cigarette. It was when I looked up at the 3rd floor that I saw her. A girl of about 10, her form blurry behind the window pane. Before I could process what I had seen, she vanished. I brushed it off as a trick of my imagination and decided to enter the decaying building. Holding a flashlight in trembling hands, I entered the abandoned factory. The silence inside was absolute, broken only by the echo of my own footsteps on the grimy floor. The vast space was filled with old, rusty machines, shrouded in thick layers of dust. I scoured the area, finding nothing but abandonment and decay. Just when I was ready to call it a day and leave, a sight sent shivers down my spine. I aimed my flashlight at the source of my dread, a young girl, the same one I had glimpsed behind the window. She hung from the ceiling, lifeless, her eyes vacant, and her form ghastly pale. My heart raced, and I took a step closer to examine her, only for her to fade away like a specter. Fear gnawed at my insides, but I couldn't let it paralyze me. I was known for my bravery, and so I continued my exploration, climbing the creaky stairs to the upper floors. As I went upstairs, my unease grew, but I had to understand what was happening. On the 3rd floor, I found her once again. She stood in the middle of the desolate space, holding a ragged doll in her tiny hands. I approached cautiously, my voice trembling as I asked, "What are you doing here, all alone in this place?" She looked up at me with unnaturally bright eyes and replied, "I come here to play, and I liked being alone." Her response sent a chill down my spine. A young girl alone in an abandoned factory, far from any civilization. It was incomprehensible. "I'd like to visit your home," I said to her, my voice quivering. To my surprise, she agreed and led me out of the building. I followed her to my car, and as we began to drive away, I couldn't help but feel the weight of her silence. The car felt heavier, and when I glanced at the rearview mirror, I saw her, still and quiet, sitting with her doll. I couldn't understand what was happening, but I couldn't turn back now. We finally entered a small village, and the girl instructed me to stop the car. I followed her to a modest house, but there was something off about the place. Not a single soul could be seen in the village, and an eerie silence hung in the air. Inside the house, I met her parents, who appeared to be farmers. Their eyes held a strange, almost otherworldly quality that seemed to peer into the depths of my soul. I felt uncomfortable, as if I were a stranger in my own skin, and the atmosphere grew more unsettling by the second. Unable to bear the discomfort any longer, I hastily bid farewell to the girl's parents and rushed back to my car. As I sped away from the village, I noticed that the girl's doll was still on the passenger seat, her silent companion. My conscience wouldn't let me leave it behind, so I decided to turn back and return it to her. But when I reached the spot where the village had been, it was nowhere to be found. It had vanished without a trace, leaving me in a state of shock and disbelief. Who was that girl, and where had that village gone? The questions hitting in my mind, and no answers were forthcoming, leaving me speechless, with an unsettling sense of the unknown and the supernatural lingering in my thoughts. My name is Ben, and I work at a textile company in a remote area. My job is in the water treatment plant. We clean the dirty water from the factory so it doesn't harm the environment. The plant is in a quiet part of the company, far from the main buildings. Not many people come here. Last month, there was a holiday. The entire company was off, but I had to come in for a night shift. My supervisor asked me to make sure the water tanks were filled and ready for the next day. It was just me completely alone. It was cold and windy that night. I arrived at 8 p.m. and started the machines. Everything was normal at first. Around 3 a.m., I decided to check the last tank at the end of the company's property. That tank is far. It stands near a row of chemical drums and old pipes, right next to a broken wall. I took my flashlight and walked toward it. As I walked, I noticed something strange. Everything was silent, too silent. Even the machines behind me sounded distant. No crickets, no wind. Just the crunch of my boots on the gravel. When I reached near the tank area, I heard something that made me stop, a slurping sound, like someone was drinking water quickly. I froze. My light shook in my hand. Who would be here? I thought. The factory was closed. There were no workers. I hadn't seen a single car in the parking lot. I slowly pointed the flashlight toward the sound. That's when I saw him. A short man, maybe 4 feet tall, squatting beside a chemical drum. He wore torn clothes. His back was dirty, his hair long and messy. His face was hard to see, but I could hear the loud drinking sound as his head was bent over a puddle. He didn't look up. My heart pounded. I stepped back slowly. Maybe he was just a homeless man, I told myself. Maybe he entered through the broken wall. Maybe he was thirsty. But something felt wrong. His skin looked grayish-blue in the light. His fingers were too long. And the way he drank, it didn't look normal. Suddenly, he stopped. His head snapped toward me. Our eyes met for just a second. His eyes were completely black, no white. Just dark, empty circles. He let out a low growl, then ran. Fast. He disappeared behind a large machine nearby. I couldn't move. My feet felt like they were stuck, and my brain started working again. Should I follow him? Every part of me said no. But something inside me, maybe my duty, maybe my stupid bravery, pushed me forward. I walked toward the machine. My flashlight flickered. "Don't mess with me now," I whispered, tapping it. I peeked behind the machine. Nothing. He was gone. I checked behind a few more machines. I looked around the drums. There was no sign of him. The water tank was nearby. I walked to it, checked the levels, and wrote down the reading. Then I stood there, looking around the empty department. It was big. Too big for one man to search completely, and too dark to be safe. I gave up. I returned to the control room and locked the door behind me. I sat in the chair, flashlight still in hand, staring at the small monitor screen. I didn't play music. I didn't scroll my phone. I just waited for the sun to rise. When morning came, the other workers started arriving. I acted normal. I didn't tell anyone what I saw. But later that day, I talked to one of the older workers, Mr. Darrow. He had been working at the company for over 20 years. I told him everything. He didn't laugh. He looked serious. Then he said something that made my skin crawl. "You're not the first person to see him." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Years ago," he said, "there was a chemical leak in that part of the plant. A small one, but dangerous. A worker named Jules was cleaning drums alone at night. No one saw him after that shift. His body was never found. They thought maybe he left the job. But strange things started happening after that." He leaned in closer. People heard drinking sounds, saw someone small and fast moving between machines. Security cameras would glitch out, so management sealed that area. But I guess someone opened it again. I didn't know what to say. Mr. Darrell placed a hand on my shoulder. If you saw him, don't go looking for him again. That man by the tank, he's not thirsty for water. It's been 3 weeks since that night. I still work in the water treatment plant, but I never go near the last tank alone, especially not at 3 ms, especially not with a flashlight, because sometimes when the night is quiet and the wind stops blowing, I can still hear that sound. And I know he's still there, squatting near the drums, drinking what no human should ever drink, waiting for the next person to come close. My name is Adam. I work in a metalwork factory far away from the city. The factory is old, surrounded by trees and empty fields. Most of the workers leave by 6 p.m., and only a few people stay late to finish urgent work. One of them is me, and my best friend, Ray. Last Friday, something strange happened. We were both working in the finished goods department. That part of the factory is the last step. All the metal tools, pipes, and machine parts are stored there before shipping. It's a large hall with shelves full of metal products. The ceiling is high, and the lights make a buzzing sound. It was 8:30 p.m. when we finished packing the last crate. Ray wiped his forehead and laughed. Finally done. I'll get us 2 cups of tea. He left for the break room. I stayed back to close the storage boxes. That's when I heard a sound. It sounded like someone was dragging a metal rod on the floor. I looked around. Ray, is that you? No answer. I walked toward the sound, which came from the far end of the hall. The area was darker. Only one flickering light bulb was hanging from the ceiling. The sound stopped. I stood still, listening. Then suddenly I heard a whisper, right next to my ear. He never left. I jumped back. My heart was beating fast. There was no one around me, just rows of metal shelves and tools. Ray returned with the tea. He saw my face. What's wrong? I heard something, I said. A whisper, and someone dragging metal. He laughed, but not in a mocking way. Maybe the wind. This old place creaks a lot. I nodded. Maybe he was right. But 5 minutes later, while we were drinking tea, something worse happened. A metal hammer flew off the top shelf and landed just inches away from Ray's foot. We both jumped. What the hell was that? He shouted. I ran to the shelf. There was no one. Nothing above it. It was not even shaky. And then, behind us, a metal door slammed shut, loud and sudden. We froze. That door was heavy. It couldn't move on its own. Ray whispered, "We're not alone here." I didn't answer. My hands were shaking. The air felt heavy and cold. We decided to leave immediately. We didn't even collect our things. On our way out, I looked back one last time. Under the flickering light bulb, I saw something. A figure, tall, with a dark shadowy face and long fingers, standing between the shelves, watching us. I grabbed Ray's arm. Run! We didn't stop until we reached outside. The wind outside felt like freedom, like we had escaped something evil. The next morning we came back early. The sun was out. Everything looked normal again. People were working, machines were running, and the finished goods hall looked just like before. Ray and I went straight to our supervisor, Mr. Harris. He was a strict man but fair. He looked surprised to see us looking so serious. We told him everything, the sounds, the whisper, the flying hammer, the slamming door, and the shadow figure. He didn't laugh. Instead, he said, "Let's check the CCTV footage." Every corner of the factory has a camera. We followed him to the security room. He played the video from last night. At first, everything looked normal. We saw ourselves working, drinking tea, and talking. Then we reached the part where the hammer fell. On the video, it didn't fall. It slowly floated into the air and then flew sideways, as if pulled by invisible hands. Mr. Harris frowned. "This is strange." Then we got to the part where the door slammed. On camera, it slammed without anyone touching it. Ray and I stared at the screen. We didn't say a word. But the scariest part was the final moment. The shadow figure. On the footage, there was nothing. No figure. No movement. Just us running out. "Wait," I said. "I saw it." "I swear." Mr. Harris rewound and paused at the exact moment. Still, no figure. But the flickering light bulb? It flickered faster, and the camera itself shook slightly, like something passed in front of it, but the camera couldn't show it. Suddenly, the screen went black. "Error. Footage corrupted," Mr. Harris sighed. "Looks like the system glitched." "No," I said. "It didn't glitch. It didn't want to be seen." Ray nodded. "Something is wrong with that part of the factory." Mr. Harris sat down, thinking. Then he said something we didn't expect. "You boys aren't the first ones to report strange things in that hall. 5 years ago, a worker named Paul died there, crushed under a pile of falling metal rods. No one knew how it happened. The cameras weren't working that night either." Ray and I looked at each other. Goosebumps ran down our arms. Mr. Harris continued. "Ever since then, we've had small issues, sounds, lights flickering, tools moving on their own. But nothing this serious." "What do we do now?" I asked. He stood up and said, "For now, no one works late in the finished goods section. I'll call someone to bless the place, maybe even have it checked by a priest." As we left his office, I looked at the factory again. In the bright daylight, it looked innocent. Just a building with machines and workers. But now I knew the truth. Something still lived in the shadows, waiting, watching, and maybe angry.